Sound Off with Greg on AM 1290, FM 104.1, and WKBKradio.com. To be part of the show, dial 357-1290. Agree or disagree, ask a question, or share information. It's time to sound off. Now, here's Greg Pregent.
11:07 in hour number 3 this morning on Sound Off with Kyle Jarvis and myself, Greg Pregent, here on AM 1290 and FM 107.5 and WKBKradio.com, streaming to the world. Thanks for joining us here this morning. This program brought to you by Elm City Bagels and Deli with bagels, soups, and salads, lunch goodies, platters, gluten-free options. They're on West Street in Keene. Give us a call with your comments and questions at 357-1290 or email us at gpregent@wkbkradio.com. And also, too, you can follow along our conversation this morning on Facebook with your messages. All right, I want to thank Carl Jacobs for coming in earlier hour, but right now we want to welcome into the studio Noel Ellis. She is an independent music reviewer for Irish bands. She writes reviews for the website Gigging Northern Ireland, and that's giggingni.com. And Noel, thanks so much for coming in and joining us here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
We just
Thank
need
you
you
for
to get a
having
little
me.
closer to the microphone. That's all.
There we go.
And so, intriguing. You was mentioning that you were coming into the studio this morning, and a lot of folks were kind of intrigued that there was someone living here in Keene that actually writes music reviews for Irish bands that play over in Ireland. And so that is kind of an odd thing. So maybe you can just kind of quickly give us a history of how you kind of became a reviewer for these bands and how it got started.
Sure. After a visit to Belfast, I fell in love with the place, and there's music everywhere. Every night of the week, a new place, there's somewhere to listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
And even on the streets, the buskers, the street performers are out everywhere. So it was just a fascinating place, cool metropolitan city, fell in love with the music. Once I came home again, was looking for something to do to be involved music-wise. And a friend suggested getting involved with the Keene Music Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great experience, and got to help book the bands for that event. And after a second visit back to Belfast, the combination of the experience with the music festival and making more contacts and meeting people in Northern Ireland, the writing gig kind of fell into my lap. As a writer, I'm always looking out for a call for writers, and since I was looking at things in Northern Ireland, those two things intersected, and the writing gig came along.
Now, when you were in Belfast and you're there and you're listening to the bands, the Irish bands, and obviously you've listened to a lot of music here in the U.S., is there a big difference between, let's say, an Irish, I mean, obviously the genre is, but let's say, just to make it simple, an Irish rock band compared to an American rock band? I mean, is there a lot of difference, or is it, there anything?
Not really. I mean, dialect-wise, you can obviously detect some more than others the Irish accent, same as you can with other British bands. But no, there in fact seems to be a lot of American influence in a lot of the sounds, and they seem to will blend a lot of things. It'll be like country pop crossovers, or heavy metal and ska will be blended together with. So when people think Irish music, they think, pipes and drums and strings and things. And there's plenty of that too, traditional Irish. But it's not much different than what you're used to in America. Heavy metal sounds like heavy metal, punk rock sounds like punk rock. Only the accent is discernible, just a little different.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to get at with just, I think a lot of people, view Irish music as kind of a stereotyped way, but you found in reviewing a lot of bands that that's really not the case, right?
Not the case. It's very, very modern. A lot of, like I said, a lot of influences and blending of styles to sort of come up almost with subgenres of music, things that you wouldn't expect together. But fascinating. Pick a genre pretty much, and there is a vast amount of talent out there in whatever artistic genre you're after.
Can you tell us, Noel, about some opportunities that you've had to review any acts that maybe some of us have heard of?
Actually, my very first published piece, before I started working with gigging Northern Ireland. My first one was for a website called Bands Northern Ireland, and they were just starting up. And I had done 2 reviews for them, and then serendipitously was in New York and saw the Tired Pony show. It was a special show, and Tired Pony is a side project of some big, relatively legendary names. Gary Lightbody from Snow Patrol, Peter Buck from REM, Ian Archer, Troy Stewart, Scott McCoy. It's, you know, a big power band.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very different than their usual stuff. Sort of a folksy singer-songwritery kind of thing happening. Lovely band. So I saw them, mentioned it to, when I got back from New York, mentioned it to my editor and said, oh, I saw this show, and since some of the members are from Northern Ireland, he suggested write something about it, and so
Yeah.
I did, and that ended up being the first published piece, and then just sort of snowballed from there.
Well, let me ask you this too. I mean, in listening to a lot of Irish music and reviewing a lot of the bands, you know, obviously, you know, they're a ways away, they're in a different continent, but I mean, how, you know, is there a chance for some of these bands? I mean, how tough is it for a band who's really good, let's say in Belfast, and get some good reviews? How difficult is it for them to make that transition to, you know, really being popular either in Britain or the United States? That's got to be a tough transition.
That's a fair point, and I'm not sure how they make the, you know, the jump across the pond there. But there are some in the UK, some more radio opportunities that America doesn't necessarily offer for up-and-comers, and a lot of times the Irish bands will leave Northern Ireland and go into other parts of the UK to build a following.
Yep.
But with social media, that travels like wildfire when somebody, you know, especially a good review, or several good reviews, or gig reviews, or that kind of stuff, it spreads so fast that you can really see, you can watch the trajectory of a band. There's some standouts that are starting to really take off and doing big headline festivals, and you know, you can watch the gig venue get bigger and bigger as months go by.
Right, they're playing,
But
they start out at a tiny club, and then they go to a little bigger club, and then they're getting to a bigger venue. And
Yeah, so as far as music business goes, I'm not sure how you make that transition, but I would think that with social media it would certainly help, because everybody's talking to everybody all over the world, essentially.
And of all the bands that you've reviewed recently, is there one band that you've reviewed that you really think could make that leap to really being popular in Britain or the United States?
Oh, sure. There's a band called A Plastic Rose, and they're sort of a post-punk Green Day kind of sound. Really tight band. They work really well together as a band. Their sound is great. They write their own material. They're poised and ready. If America gets a hold of them, they'll take off like wildfire. That is poised, I think, best for radio play. There's some other bands that, if you're more for audiophiles, that are more album bands.
Sure.
That may not necessarily get the album play, but there's an acoustic band called The Jury Disagree, and it's like Zeppelin on acoustic guitars. It's amazing, beautiful stuff. 8-minute songs, not going to get the radio play, but it's definitely worth the listen. So you have something in either camp of radio worthy and just straight good albums.
Another thing I'm curious about, Noel, is whether you've had the opportunity, or whether you've been asked to review non-Irish acts who are popular in Ireland. Is that something that sort of fits into what you do, or is it strictly Irish acts?
That's funny you should mention that. It just came up recently. The opportunity is getting ready to come up for us for the writers that all write for gigging, to review bands that are visiting Northern Ireland, putting that on their tour route, and so we will get a chance to review some other bands besides Irish bands that are visiting in Ireland. The whole music scene is just exploding.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty popular stop for a lot of pretty major acts.
Yeah, it is. It's really become, there's some beautiful venues there to play in. Everything from smaller venues like the Ulster Music Hall to the Odyssey Arena, and of course pubs and clubs and things. across the map. I mean, beautiful spots, not just in Belfast, but around Belfast and the coastal towns, and it's just a great scene. And they're very, the artists seem to be very supportive of one another, not just the ones that they're touring with or playing with, but everybody reaches out to each other and supports each other, which is another thing I like about working with the Northern Irish. That music scene, it's a big community.
Now, I'm looking on the website, and they do have some live reviews of some bands that played in Belfast, and bands like Sisters of Mercy just had played there. Also, too, Anthrax had played there.
Oh yeah.
So they like their little heavier metal stuff there, and but also too, Richie Sambora.
Oh yeah, that was a big
playing at the Ulster Hall in Belfast.
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful venue.
And so there are plenty of people who go there, and yeah, and I agree. I do know a lot of acts like to go to Belfast, and I would think, because if you said you've been there a couple times, it's a gorgeous city, right?
It is. It's a beautiful city. It's a nice combination of modern and history, and the people are just very cool, and it's a great place. And music really seems, it's just everywhere you go. It's literally on the streets of Belfast, and the street performers called buskers are revered. It's not, they really take that serious. That's like your job, even if you're on the street with your guitar case.
Yeah.
The people that are witnessing are serious about it. The artists are serious about it. Belfast is serious about their music, and they should be. There's an amazing amount of talent.
Seems like a pretty organic thing as well, because obviously there's a deep, long history of music in that country. And,
oh sure,
still
that
going
goes
on
back
today.
thousands of years. Telling their histories and our tales through music, and then that continues in the consequent generations, and it just takes different forms. And it's in ska bands and jazz musicians, and instead of the traditional always. That's there too.
Cool. All right. Well, we do have a phone call here this morning, so we'll go to the phone lines. And thanks for calling Sound Off. Please go right ahead.